Hi, class. We're going to read chapters 7, 8, 9 today, and I wore my fancy tuxedo shirt today, but it needs to be accompanied by my fancy hat, so that's what I'm going to read in today. I look fancy for you guys. It's a little crooked. I don't know what's going on. There we go. All right, so we need to go back and see what we read last time. And it says something about nature always also adores a good secret. And the secret, if you guys remember, is that all nature can speak and talk to each other, but we don't know that. So up to you to decide if you feel like that's true or not. I kind of do. I feel like there's a way that nature can communicate with each other. Let's see what happens. Now, I told you this book starts off a little slow, and then it picks up. So at the end of these chapters today, you'll start to see what the problem is. We just need to get a background story for who Red the tree is and what's going on with all of that. So we're going to get a little more detail with that and then find out what the problem is. All right, chapter 7, page 23. I'm not just a tree, by the way. I'm a home, a community. Folks nest on my branches, burrow between my roots, lay eggs on my leaves. And then there are my hollows. Tree hollows, holes in a trunk or branch, are not uncommon, especially in trees like me who've been around a while. Hollows can be small enough for tiny salt and pepper chickadees or a family of deer mice, or they can be quite large, big enough for an open-minded bear. Of course, I'm a city tree. We don't get a lot of bears around here unless they're of the teddy variety, but I've hosted more than my share of raccoons, foxes, skunks, opossums, and mice. One year I was home to a lovely and exceedingly polite porcupine family. I've even sheltered a person. Long story. I have lots of those, stored up, by the way, as squirrel hoards acorns. Hollows happen for many reasons. Woodpeckers, fallen branches, lightning, disease, burrowing insects. In my case, I have 3 hollows. 2 medium-sized ones were made by woodpeckers, and the largest one happened when I was quite young. I lost a large branch that was weakened by wet snow during a nor'easter. It was a big wound, slow to heal, and my spring leafing that year was paltry, my fall color pale, and frankly embarrassing. Because remember, he's very proud of his bright red fall colors. But eventually the hole healed, widened with the help of insects, and now, about 4 feet off the ground, I have a deep oval hollow. Hollows offer protection from the elements, a secure spot to sleep and to stash your belongings. They're a safe place. Hollows are proof that something bad can be something good with enough time and care and hope. That is really good and relevant today. I'm going to write that down. Page 25, paragraph 3. Hollows, so you just write this. Proof that something bad can become something good with enough time and care. Knowing like what we're going through right now might seem bad, but maybe down the road when we look back at it, we'll realize some good things came out of this. Like more family time is a good thing. Being a home to others isn't always easy. Sometimes I feel like an apartment complex with too many residents who don't always get along. Still, we make it work. There's a lot of give and take in nature. Woodpeckers hammer at my trunk, but they also eat annoying pests. Grass cools the earth, but it also bickers with me over water. Every spring brings new residents, old friends, and more chances for compromise. This spring in particular, there has been quite the baby boom. Currently, I am home to owl nestlings, baby opossums, and tiny raccoons. I am visited regularly by the skunk kits who live underneath the front porch of a nearby house. This is unprecedented. Never have I sheltered so many babies. It just doesn't happen. Animals like space. They like their own territory. Normally, there would be arguing, perhaps even a stolen nest or a midnight battle. And certainly there have been some disagreements, but I made it clear that eating your neighbors will not be allowed while I'm in charge. Me, I don't feel crowded at all having so much company. Making others feel safe is a fine way to spend your days. I like red. Chapter 8. I have one more community member, though. Although visitor is probably a better way to describe Samar, our new character Samar. In January, she moved here with her parents into one of the houses I shade, a tiny blue house with a sagging porch and a tiny garden. She is perhaps 10 years old or so, with wary eyes and a shy smile. Samar has the look of someone who has seen too much, someone who wants the world to quiet itself. Soon after moving in, Samar began sneaking into the yard once her parents had fallen asleep. Even on the coldest nights, she trudged outside in her red boots and her green jacket. Her breath was a frosty veil. She would stare at the moon and at me, and sometimes at the little greenhouse next door, where a boy who looks to be about her age lives. As it grew warmer, Samar would venture out in her pajamas and robe and sit beneath me an old blanket spattered with moonlight. Her silence was so complete, her gentleness so apparent, that the residents, remember those are the animals in his tree, the residents would crawl from their nests and thistle down and dandelion fluff to join her. They seemed to accept her as one of their own. Bongo especially loved Samar. She would flit her to her shoulder and settle there. So imagine a crow hanging out on your shoulder and all these animals crowded around you. Sometimes she would even say hello in a fine imitation of Samar's voice. Often Bongo gave Samar a little gift she'd found during her daily flights. A Monopoly token, the car. A gold hair ribbon, a cap from a root beer bottle. Bongo keeps a stash of odds and ends in one of her smaller hollows, which the opossums kindly tolerate. You would never know who I might need to bribe, she likes to say. But her gifts to Samar weren't bribes. They were just Bongo's way of saying, I'm glad we're friends. And you can see the gifts there. If this were a fairy tale, I would tell you there was something magical about Samar, that she can cast a spell on the animals. Perhaps animals don't just leave their nests and burrows willingly. They are afraid of people with good reason. But this isn't a fairy tale, and there was no spell. Animals compete for resources just like humans. They eat one another. They fight for dominance. Nature's not always pretty or fair or kind, but sometimes surprises happen. And Samar, every spring night, reminded me there is beauty in stillness and grace in acceptance, and that you're never too old to be surprised. All right, one more chapter, chapter 9. I was pleased to see Samar's family join the neighborhood. It had been a long while since we had any newcomers, but I knew that with that they would put down roots just like so many other families from so many other places. I know a thing or two about roots. One night not long ago, Samar came out to visit. It was 2 a.m, late even for her. She had been crying. Her cheeks were damp. She leaned against me, and her tears were like hot rain. In her hand was a small piece of cloth, pink with little dots. Something was written on it. A wish. The first wish I'd seen in months. I wasn't surprised she knew about the Wishtree tradition. I'm kind of a local celebrity. Samar reached up, gently pulled down my lowest branch, and tied the fabric in a loose knot. I wish, she whispered, for a friend. She glanced over at the greenhouse. Behind an upstairs curtain, a shadow moved. And with that, Samar vanished back into the little blue house. So she made a wish. All right, that's it. But usually you guys start crying and whining that you want to read one more. So everybody cry and whine right now. No, one more, please. Please, one more chapter. Okay, I listened. All right, so chapter 10, and then we're done. When you stand still for over 2 centuries while the world whirls past, things happen. Mostly by far and away, good things have been my lot in life. My leaves have cooled picnickers and proposers. Beneath my bows, vows have been made, hearts mended. Nappers have napped, dreamers have dreamed. I've watched accents attempted, listened to stories spun. And the laughter, always and forever laughter. But sometimes things happen that aren't so good. When they have occurred, I've learned there's not much you can do except stand tall and reach deep. I have, for example, been hacked at, carved into, used for target practice. I have been underwatered, overpruned, fertilized and fussed over, ignored and neglected. I have been struck by lightning, battered by sleet. I have been threatened with axes, chainsaws, diseases, and insects. I have tolerated the sharp claws of squirrels and nagging pokes of woodpeckers. I have been climbed by cats and marked by dogs. I have my aches and pains like everyone. Last year I had a mite infestation that drove me nuts. Leaf blisters, sooty mold, oak wilt, leaf scorch, been there, done that. Still, trees are luckier than people in one way. Only 1% of a fully grown tree is actually alive at one time. Most of me is made of wood cells that are no longer living. In many ways, that makes me tougher than you. So yes, I've seen a lot, and who knows? I may see much more. I could live to be 300, 500 even. It happens. Red oaks lead long lives, longer than our daintier friends black willows, persimmons, apples, and redbuds. And yet a few days after Samar's tearful wish, something happened that made me wonder if I'd finally witnessed too much. So make a prediction. What would be too much for him to handle? It's probably going to be something kind of negative. All right, we'll find out tomorrow.